I'm just going to talk today really broadly about partnerships at Canadian Women in Sport. And so if you're not familiar with our organization, we're an MSO dedicated to building an equitable and inclusive sport system that really empowers women and girls as participants and leaders. And so we do a lot of things to advance that mission, including research, advocacy, and then programming. And so I'll talk today just about the different pathways or approach to partnership that we take. So, it really could be anything from we will actually go out and say we have a key question that we want to answer. So if you're familiar with the Rally Report or the Leadership Snapshot, these are like some of our yearly pieces that we put out into the sports system, monitoring trends like girls' participation or women's representation in leadership. And so in cases of projects like that, what we do is we have our question and we'll go out and look for researchers who we know can support that work. But it's really led by us and supported usually by an academic advisor. So one example we're currently working on is investigating who the potential fan of women's professional sport is. So we're working with Dr. Sherry Bradish at TMU specifically to dig into that. Another way that we partner is really as the connecting point between either a government or industry partner who approaches us and an academic or a set of academic researchers. So one example there is that the Ontario government Ministry of Education reached out to us last year because they read the Rally Report and they wanted to know if that kind of research existed specifically with Ontario schools. And so we don't have capacity on our own team to actually lead that research, but we manage the project. So we connected them to Kathy Sabiston at the University of Toronto and her team. And so her and her team are leading that multi-year project. But we're responsible for project management, supporting the relationship between her and the government. So we take a lot of that administrative work. And then we also help support with the knowledge translation back to the government. So we stay involved throughout that. And then the final piece would be more researcher-led projects. And so we get approached all the time because we generate a ton of data. Like we run a lot of programs, we collect lots of evaluation data. And so people come to us, they learn about our programs and they're like, I'd like to learn more about how that might work. For example, I saw Danielle Alexander here earlier. So she approached us to ask about if there were any organizations working in the same game challenge who specifically served parasport. And so in that case, it's really a researcher-led initiative. We connected her to our participants and then we will like potentially work with them on the knowledge translation piece at the end, but it's really led by her and her own team. And we're just sort of the conduit there. And so it's just like a small sampling. I feel like there's lots of things going on. And my goal today was hopefully to come out of this with more research partnerships. I don't come from an academic sport background. And so I don't know many of you in the room, but I hope that this is an opportunity to create more partnerships as we move forward and figure out how we can make things a little bit better. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Really great to be here. Again, this year, it's a conference that we love to attend at the CAC. And of course, it just got down. Yeah. So it's great because I don't have to introduce what I do at the Coaching Association of Canada, but just maybe for everyone, the CAC, the Coaching Association of Canada, we are mandated to lead ethically sound coach and sport leader training in collaboration with stakeholders and with respect of all the provinces and territories in Canada, of all their contexts. So that's an important piece of what we do, and we will talk about partnerships in a bit. What I do as a coaching consultant, that is 1/3 of my job, but a big and important part of my job. I actually work with a number of national sport organizations. They have a person identified for their coach development program. And I work with this person and help them to build and implement their coaching program. So they work at the national level, and then the NSO will work with the provincial sport organization and coach developers in the different provinces and territories who actually deliver the coach training, right? So there's a long chain there that I just feel it's important that everyone understand. So between 2017 and 2019, we have built a research strategy. And that is the usual picture that we're using to illustrate our research strategy that aims to support quality coaching program policies and practices with enhanced knowledge mobilization. We have 4 areas of interventions that are communicating, creating, supporting, and connecting. I'll be happy to respond to any question on the other areas, but I'll focus on the connecting aspect here because that's where I would say most of the connecting or the partnership things happen. So through the years, we have developed and built a sport coaching research network. We now have 100 persons in this network, and they represent 23 universities and 8 provinces and territories in Canada. It's public, so anyone can join, certainly if they are interested to foster culture that supports knowledge mobilization and collaboration for evidence-based decisions in sport coaching. What is really great with this partnership, we have different connection strategies with the members of the network, but it really allows the CAC to communicate some of our areas of focus, and it allows us as well to stay aware and informed of new areas of focus or new emerging results, for example, from the research, and to innovate a little bit with that. There's multiple fantastic opportunities, but that's illustrating one of the challenges that we have. Our research network is actually part of a way bigger network, right? There's just example of partners that we have. So each partnership will look very, very differently, very, very different, because our focus is to help meet the needs from these partners. We are an association. So our focus is to help our partners. So I'll just conclude here with some examples of tangible outputs from different partnerships that we had in the past. If you have any questions, I hope I had enough time to inspire some for later, because I think it's going to be the most fun part of this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, this room is much larger when you're on this side of the podium. So, first, I just want to thank Cirque and the other panelists and presenters for allowing me to share the floor with them today. I also do just want to add that I'm not actually intimately involved with the project that I'm going to be highlighting, but I'll do my best during the Q&A to answer what I can. So yeah, when I was asked to speak on behalf of Sport for Life and discuss our role in research partnerships, I immediately thought about how it impacted my day-to-day life. As the manager of quality sport with Sport for Life, one of my intentions is to facilitate communication and collaboration across all various sectors and levels of organizations. It's evident that partnerships have a brilliant knack of bringing different brains, perspectives, and experiences together to solve complex problems, pursue common goals, and in Sport for Life's case, make sport and physical activity fun again. Excuse me. I'm excited to share a brief overview on the sampling, diversification, and multisport study with our fantastic research partners, Dr. Sarah Tietzel and Dr. Leisha Strawn from the University of Manitoba, and Dr. Melanie Gregg from the University of Winnipeg. Although the study is ongoing, we kicked it off with a simple question. Do activity levels as a youth lead to a more physically active and physically literate adult? The aim of the study is to uncover what somebody's physical activity history and personal significance of sport can predict at one's participation in adulthood. So 2 key insights of the research literature that are helping guide our researchers at the moment. First, it's been found that early specialization in a single sport can actually hinder long-term performance, while on the other hand, those who experience multi-sport activities during childhood are more likely to stay involved in organized sports as adults. Additionally, one of our morning presenters and a leading expert in the space, Dr. Jean Côté's research suggests diverse sport experiences during childhood positively influence future elite performance and long-term participation in sport. In a nutshell, our mission is to determine if playing more sports at a younger age keep you a more physically active and physically literate adult. With that said, based on my experience with Sport for Life and my personal experience in sport across different sectors and environments, one of the main challenges is actually implementation of the research findings. In my opinion, and this is very much my opinion, in our current system, sampling, diversification, and multisport are highly improbable. The realities of financial barriers for both the organizations and the participants, scheduling conflicts, peer influences, and other factors all impact the practicality of actually engaging in multiple activities per year. Now, I know ideally I would be up here presenting some of the research findings, but as it hasn't concluded, I'd like to just close with a question. How can we bridge the gap between sustainable implementation in real-world contexts while ensuring that the valuable research being done isn't left on the shelf, but rather influences positive change? So I'll let you think on that one, and that's all for me. Thanks.
Super excited to be here today to be able to present. Most of our research is from a behavioral perspective at physical activity, particularly in the early years, and so a little bit more sport adjacent. But what I can speak to is the work that we do at Participaction and how heavily we leverage research in everything that we try to do. So I'm going to present just a little bit on our organization, but really the purpose of this is to demonstrate all the ways that we really try to integrate data, research, and evidence, and also in terms of future call to action, given that we just very recently published and released our new 5-year strategic plan. And so given now that I'm in my new role, it's the first time we had a scientist at the higher level, so it was nice to be able to integrate from the start. So really who we are, we're a national nonprofit organization, and our main role is to really find ways that we can make physical activity an everyday part of life for everyone, regardless of where you live, work, or play. Our main values do circle on this idea of community, creativity, impact, and balance. And we mean that not only internally from our functioning as what we do as staff or as part of team members at Participaction, but also all our work that we do working externally with a number of different groups, be it individuals at the Gen Pop level or a number of the groups that we work with at the sector. So who do we serve? So based on our now current 5-year plan, we do have, I think it's a good and a bad that we do try to serve all people living in Canada. But as you know, for many people at the national level, that can be a tricky thing to do when you're trying to create messaging, resources, or products that hit and target every single person in Canada, as well as the groups that serve those individuals, knowing that there's so much inherent heterogeneity. But specifically over the next 5 years, we do have an added focus on this one group that we consider our getting started group. So these are those individuals that have the intention to get active, maybe even the motivation, but we're still seeing that struggle of how do we close that intention to action gap. The next is our equity deserving, or maybe better referred to as equity owed groups. So those again vary quite considerably across Canada, but we do have an added focus on those that identify as living with a disability, those considered newcomers from racialized groups, as well as individuals of low income neighborhoods or disadvantaged situations. It's also important that we do identify that the government and organizations within the sector, and when I say sector, I mean that in the most broadest sense of not just the usual players, so those in sport, recreation, and physical activity, but also those kind of more adjacent fields. So healthcare, community, religious, and faith groups, healthcare, and then of course, research institutions. So we do have 4 areas of strategic focus, and I'm just going to quickly go over them, but more so as a way to highlight and hopefully that you can see just how important research and having good evidence really does come into play. So one is drive greater impact. So that's not only important for ensuring that the work that we're doing is actually impacting the individuals that we're working with, be it at the Gen Pop public facing level, or if it's the groups that we're working with to better empower them to do the work, as many times they are better positioned to actually work with our very bottom group. But it's really important that we also demonstrate that to ensure that we're securing additional support or funding moving forwards. We need to have the right data there. We need to ensure that it's credible and reliable. How do we champion the issue? Again, this isn't just with us or participation being that champion, but it's more of the idea of how do we build this collaborative effort and advance many of the issues that we all have been discussing today and tomorrow. So again, we need that right evidence in hand. The next 2 areas are really just growing our funding and support. And again, those are not just for participation, but as the collective sector as a whole. And then to optimize our culture and operations. And again, I mean this not just internally of what we do on our day-to-day to make sure that we actually walk the walk, but also in terms of who we're working with and how we're actually doing that work. Everything that we want to do, we want to ensure that it's evidence-informed, science-backed, and that if it's not us leading it, then it's us partnering with those that are best able to actually carry out that work. And then it becomes our responsibility to then find ways to creatively disseminate it out. So that is the end of my presentation. But again, just really wanted to demonstrate all the various ways very, very quickly of how we really try to integrate research and evidence throughout the work that we do, given our new plan. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the panel. I know that kind of probably seems like a really thin slice, but purposefully done so that we have a lot of time. I say a lot, 20 minutes, right? But it does give us a lot of time here to hopefully allow you guys to dive in a little bit deeper with each of our panelists. So I'll look around the room first and to our Zoom people to see if anyone has anything they'd like to dive in. Gentleman in the back.
I'm curious to know if any of those doing research in the area of sport coaching have thought about approached it, and maybe this is old. I'm been around sport a while, but I'm kind of new to it, doing it full time. I was a executive in the federal government, and I remember one of the things I got was access to an executive coach, and at the time I was coaching youth basketball, and the executive coach said, be very deliberate in your coaching of these youth, because you will find that a lot of the transferable skills that make you an effective sport coach will make you a very effective people manager. And I found that to be true, because kids are very honest. If you don't build a relationship with them, they don't care how much you know about making a layup or a jump shot or whatever. And so I'm curious, in terms of the research on areas like coaching, coaching is a massive leadership platform in terms of people development and the skills that we give people. I worked in the area of Indigenous affairs, where in order to get better results in supporting Indigenous people in terms of job training, organizations like Employment and Social Development started working with Indigenous organizations that had trusted existing relationships that were sort of better able to deliver. So on the sport coaching, have we thought about approaching it more, engaging with organizations like ESDC or the various provincial skills, and thinking about how can we turn this? This is not about fun and games and play. This is about how people, in particular hard to reach populations, get skills and capacities that they really, really need, that will help them. The likelihood of being, a professional coach is not very high, but the skills that they get will enable them in other ways. Is that something anyone's thinking about? Maybe it's happening already.
I will say the work has started, and it's an amazing learning curve. We just 1 year and a half or close to it, ago. We received funding from PHAC, PIAC, the Public Health Agency, to actually work to reach new audiences that were the most affected with COVID. That was the purpose of the grant. But this grant is allowing us to actually reach out to populations that we never reached out until now. And the learning is incredible. The response to your question is we are starting and learning a lot.
Anyone else from the audience or Zoom?
Hi, Allison Doherty from Western University. I actually have a bunch of questions. Which one should I pick? I'm going to go for this one, since I have connections with two of you in this context. Some organizations have research committees that are sort of bridging from your organization with the researchers out into the research world, if you will. And what would you say can be the role and the benefit of a research committee? And if you feel strongly against it, what are the main challenges of that?
I can answer that. So we do have a research advisory group at Participaction. For short, it's called the RAG, which sounds like horrible. But anyway, our research advisory group. We are very fortunate to have that. Obviously, I do wear both my research hat and that of a knowledge translator. But the great thing about this group is it does enhance our internal capacity from a research perspective, because despite the fact being a national organization, we are still small in scope. We are located in Toronto, but there's only 23 of us. And within the research evaluation, knowledge translation, and behavioral insights, there's only 2 of us. And it's a third of what the organization does. And so with our research advisory group, we have 3 main goals. We have a full detailed activity plan that we detail every single year. But the main 3 goals of this group is 1, to help advance the objectives of the organization itself, mostly around championing physical activity, driving impact, and to build out further capacity in and among groups or individuals that are from equity-owed groups. The second is to advance the overall sector. So the exact same things, but not just Participaction specific, but more so with the resources that we do have, can we help out other organizations? Can we kind of be that megaphone for them in getting their messages out, knowing that our brand does have a little bit more presence, so it allows us to do more for some of the smaller organizations. And then thirdly, because it is a volunteer group, is providing opportunities for them to leverage all of the research, because like Women in Sport in Canada, we also have a lot of research. We have a lot of connections with various research institutions. And so we do provide as much as we can training opportunities for their trainees to help build out HQP and to kind of help build out the future researchers. So for us, it's really great. Something we've had to be cognizant of is just making sure that the diversity of our research advisory group changes and that it's representative of the people, places that we're researching. And so that's been kind of our next task, is ensuring that, and when we say diversity, that we're really trying to be as inclusive across the board, across a number of different socio-demographic factors.
I can just build on that a little bit. Allison actually sits on Canadian Women in Sports Impact Research Committee. And I would say, like, in addition to some of what we try to accomplish through our research committee is similar. We've also experienced challenges with the space of gender equity in sport is a really broad space, and you can come at it from like the social science lens, the sports science lens, and trying to find a way to get all of those voices in the room and make sure that we actually have advice or we know what's happening in the various different literatures has proved a challenge. And then I'd say the other piece of it is trying to find ways to, I think, provide opportunities for researchers who aren't just in that network. Because what it can lead the organization to do is to go back to the same people each time, because you have relationships, you have working agreements, you work well with people. Often we're moving like quickly and on tight timelines. But then I think sometimes it can narrow the organization's approach to who it collaborates with. So I think there's a balance to be had in terms of like what Marie-Pier has at the CAC with that really expanded network, as well as a closer group of advisors who can actually just enhance the organization's research capacity.
Thank you. So from the Zoom room, we've got a question, and it's open-ended for all of you, I think. And that's, in your experiences, what are the main challenges that researchers face when conducting this collaborative inquiry or being a part of these research committees?
Just from a non-researcher perspective, I think one of the larger issues of research in general is, in my opinion, is the lack of actual grassroots implementers being involved in the research from beginning to end. So I mean, like from proposal all the way through to evaluation. I think if we were to able to bring them in and actually hear what their concerns are, we would actually be able to address some of those concerns. I think oftentimes researchers, and this isn't a slight at research at all, but we sit up here and we think we know exactly what the issue is, when in reality, on the ground, a lot of the actors can't even get to those issues because they have so many other things that they have to get through first. So that's just my very novice perspective on the research so far.
Yeah, she has something to say. I don't have much to say. I think it's a really, really good question, but it's asking us what we think the researcher challenges are. I think I could have ideas, but I don't think it's for me to tell. Please tell us if you face challenges. Yeah,
I feel like where I think sometimes we come into conflict is our organizations have certain strategic objectives and certain goals, and they are not often as open-ended as the researchers' goals we are partnering with. And so we often have something that we're striving to get out of a partnership in terms of like a resource or some like knowledge translation piece. And that doesn't always match up with the timeline of how the research itself actually unfolds. And so I think it can lead to like just a bit of conflict in both process and goals. Not that it can't be resolved or isn't an important part of the process, but just can be a place where different incentives and different approaches to the work can take time to work together.
So to add to that, very similar for us is this mostly around timeline. So for any group, if we're leading with researchers, they'll want to get, say, ethical approval. And I think trying to communicate with other people within our team is like, well, that takes time. And that if we do want them leading some of our activities, we can't actually start, say, collecting data yet until we have that ethical approval. And with a lot of the activities or timelines we are working with at Participaction, it's on to the next consistently. Sometimes because we have to, depending on who our funders or what the project is. And so, yeah, I'd say the timeline's probably one of our biggest ones. Again, if something's being published, it's not wanting to put out some sort of knowledge product until that information's been published, and then waiting, because that does delay sometimes some of the projects that or items that Participaction wants to do. So I would say that's probably our biggest challenge too. And then I would say the other one, similar to Joe, is the issue with like the top or top down, bottom up approach, is that oftentimes when we do stuff with researchers, sometimes it continues to remain just among academics. And so it's that constant struggle of how do we ensure that we're distilling that information or packaging it and getting to the right people in the right time in the right way. That continues to be a little bit of a struggle for us as well.
I think it's more of a comment than a question, because I've been listening to everyone and this valuable, because I'm often on the other side, but I like to be on your side. One of the things that I remark among my colleagues is that there's very few colleagues that are comfortable with press releases, that think that they're important, that think beyond publication. Oh, it's in press. Great. That's it. Let's move on to the next thing. Bringing it to scale through a good press release. Every university has a press office, and in partnership with our partners, together, standing together, bringing it to scale, bringing it out there on the CTV news or whatever we like to do. That's really important. That's really important because it gives more credibility. It helps you fulfill your knowledge transfer wish. And it also, I think, reminds taxpayers about the message, about the importance of sport, the importance of all this that you're doing and we're doing. And so I just wanted to pass that comment that we need to do more media training for researchers and for organizations so that they understand how easy it is to be able to transmit knowledge to podcasts, radio, and the news. Thanks.
Linda, you're speaking my language. I'm literally like, well, I work for SCRI, and I want all your information. I'm a storyteller by nature. So first of all, thank you to the panel very much for taking the time to talk about your projects. I thought it was super interesting. Obviously, they're still available. I'm making you guys available. So for the rest of the time they're here. But actually, seriously, following up on what Linda said, I think as a storyteller and as a person that is a journalist, I think it's really important for the information to get disseminated. I think there's a tendency to have all the silos. So again, I'm happy to be here. Also a journalist for 20 years, happy to help out with media training. I don't know if that's a service we can provide, Deborah, but anyway, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, panel. It was awesome.